Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. Thank you for joining today's episode. We're on a mission to share e-commerce logistics insights, trends, successes, and challenges from the leaders and innovators in our space.
Why wasn't 3PL just good enough? Why wasn't 4PL just good enough? Why is 5? What causes that? What causes that are these rapid shifts in commerce, right? We have seen over the last 3 to 4 years such rapid changes in commerce. People pivoting from B2B to B2C or overnight because their channel shut down during COVID.
Welcome, Ecom Logistics Nation. This episode, Ninad and I welcome Steve Denton, CEO of Where2Go, a UPS company. As a serial entrepreneur, Steve has had 3 successful exits and a history of building great organizations. Prior to joining Where2Go, Steve was the president and CRO of Collective I, a pioneer in AI and market-leading platform for enterprise sales organizations. Previously, he was GM and vice president of marketing solutions at eBay and was responsible for all of eBay enterprise digital and agency business units and integrating 9 acquired companies into one global marketing solution leader. He founded and is active with Goodness Now, a charitable organization that provides weekend meals to nutrition-challenged elementary schools during the summer. Children located in New Jersey. How can't you love that? Steve, it's an absolute pleasure to have you join us today, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me. I've always enjoyed our conversations, and it was great seeing you guys about 2 weeks ago in person. So it's really, really good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Well, and I'm super excited to have you on the pod as well. This goes to show, I've been talking about this for a while. Like even on the last podcast with Mark Lavelle, I kind of mentioned there is the PayPal mafia, but in the logistics space, there is like the eBay mafia, that GSI commerce, eBay side of the universe, the amount of leaders that it has produced out in the market. And here's one more of them, right? So super excited.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Lavelle, right? Because Lavelle and I worked together at eBay, right? Mark's a great friend and he's a great partner and wicked smart. But yeah, Mark was looking after the Magento business unit and I was looking after eBay Enterprise Marketing Solutions. But the crazy thing about it is because it's a shared services environment is Mark's running Magento and I'm running sales for him at Magento. And then I'm running eBay Marketing Solutions and he's running product for me. So anyway, but really good guy. I really enjoyed that podcast that you guys had with him. It's always great to hear from Mark and the team. So great.
Yeah. Great guy. Well, Steve, you've obviously had a fascinating career. So we would love to start with you sharing about that journey. Maybe cherry picking any of your highlight reel that you'd like to share and basically what led to this point you're at now, being CEO of Where2Go.
Sure. So when you're old like me, that journey's long. So I'll hit the headlines. When people read my bio, they talk about the 3 successful exits. They never want to talk about the 2 losers I had, unless maybe you're Elon Musk. If you've done more than one, they can't all be home runs. I think about my career really in 3 chunks. Starting out, small school in West Virginia, graduated. I went to work for Pepsi right out of college. My first boss went on to become the president of Pepsi Cola.
Oh, wow.
So I spent a couple years in CPG at Pepsi, got trained really well. I found myself then over at a quasi startup, which was a company called RPS, which ended up becoming FedEx Ground, and we got acquired. But I started as a sales rep there in Baltimore, Maryland, and I spent 9 years at that company, and that's kind of where I got my taste for logistics. And back in 99, Google didn't exist at that point. The way, and online advertising was called portal deals. You just make big buys online. So I'm in New York. I'm running New York for FedEx, and I'm seeing more and more of this internet commerce going through the network. And I met a brother and sister who had an idea. Their name was Stephen and Heidi Messer for this online commission-based sales organization where websites would earn commissions. It's now called performance marketing or affiliate marketing, but they invented it. Yeah. Wow. And I stepped out in faith. And as a 33-year-old, I left that job at FedEx to go be an entrepreneur in New York City with 2 young kids. And we almost went out of business in 2000 when the internet was like crashing, and we sold that company to Rakuten in 2005. And that's what got me an opportunity to be a CEO and a president, because Hiroshi Mikitani, who owned the Rakuten, asked me to stay and lead the company. And then that just took me down this journey. And then I met Michael Rubin over at GSI, and he wanted to go build out a media business. And we did that and called it GSI Media. And then we merged it into GSI, and then we sold that to eBay. And I spent some time at eBay, about 3 years. I had this interesting background, 20 years in digital and 10 years in supply chain, right? I knew the UPS executives, and they just reached out to me about this amazing business that they were starting up to disrupt supply chain. And I took a look at it, and I thought it was really, really special. So we moved to Atlanta 2 weeks before the world closed down in March of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And we got peddling on this amazing company called Where to Go, which at the time was a 1-year-old company that came out of an incubation innovation lab at UPS, which in itself is a fascinating story. But like I said, my story is long, and that's about as short as it gets. So 3 chunks, right? Early stage, digital, back in supply chain, right? So, but it's all commerce related.
And that's that timing that you just mentioned, right? Where it's right before the world shut down, and it was like kind of the perfect timing, even in the logistics space. I mean, if companies grew as 3PL, or specifically with the merchandising demand, the world moves online. You are seeing, people want to start up new businesses, and e-commerce seems like the way to go because it's all digital. You can do the sourcing, you can do the placement of inventory with a service like Where to Go, right? And others out in the market. It was just a perfect mix. And it also seemed like, I want to talk to you about this because, as you are on the UPS side, back in 2016, Dan and I were doing a similar thing. The difference was, you were incubated as a separate company. We were doing as a small division within the supply chain organization of FedEx and building a similar solution. And we had this hypothesis looking at like, okay, we have the opportunity to build a 3PL network that's fully connected for the merchant, our infrastructure all over the place. And then there is this hypothesis around 4PLs, right? Mm-hmm. And it seems like for you, or Where to Go, of course, it's a successful organization, and 4PL is what you leaned on. Yeah. How do you think about it? Because I've spoken about it in the past with some other companies, right? I've actually mentioned Shopify out loud. I said, this I struggle with, right? Like where there is margin stacking, some of the cultural ethos don't kind of, play well into this, right? But then you have successful companies like yours, right? Mm-hmm. As the market dynamic changes, what do you think about the 3PL versus 4PL motion?
Or 5PL. We might as well throw that in there, right?
I'm interested in you explaining what 5PL is to all of our audiences, because you use that word and I am super curious.
Yeah. So thanks for asking the question. And I want to address one thing real quick. I think that was one of the smart things that UPS did when it incubated Where to Go. It said, let's make it its own separate company. Let's take in outside money. Let's have its own board, right? So it got set up as a separate company, which was attractive for me, but you still had the name. So yeah, we started as a 4PL. So here's the way I think about the space. Obviously, 3PL, tried and true, been around a long time. But when I think about 3PLs, you know what? It's a great business model, but you are meeting them where their network is, right? You're doing an integration with that 3PL, like Radio or somebody like that. But your network is going to be where their network is, right? And your integration is going to be for them and into their platform. And look, that's been a great business, and it'll continue to be a great business. And it's the market leader in terms of size. It dwarfs the other two, right? But so you think about the benefits, right? Stable, typically dedicated workforce there. It's controlled, but it's pretty inflexible and limited because you're meeting them where they want to be met. When you think about 4PLs, now all of a sudden a 4PL is really like how we started at Where to Go, connecting 3PLs into a network. I remember when we started, we had 50 different warehouses connected on one common platform. And the idea was, hey, let's have the flexibility of having your inventory distributed through the country, wherever you need it to be based on where your consumers are or your B2B customers are. And you're really at that point doing a lot of strategic services. You're doing some end-to-end supply chain there from factory floor to front door. And you're solving that from a technology standpoint. And I would say that's where the space would have ended until you started seeing retailers get into the space and they say, we want to monetize our space, right? Like, so the Gap or what Quiet Logistics did, American Eagle, 100%, or, half a dozen phone calls I get every single week from folks who have these cathedrals of supply chain. And now you've gotten this model where a 5PL is really an integrator these days, right? A 5PL is integrating 3PLs, retailers, your own warehouses as a merchant, your drop shippers, and you're really integrating that all into one platform, what I like to call headless commerce platforms. And it's funny, we were in the 5PL space before the name existed because one of our original warehouses were Regis, the haircut place, and they've got a couple brands there. So they were really good at shipping supplies, beauty supplies, to their thousands of Regis and other branded beauty salons throughout the country. But they had space and labor that was available. And they came to us and, man, they crushed it. They crushed it for us because they were really good at it. And so we were in the 5PL space before we even knew what the 5PL space was. And so I think we're put all that aside, guys. I think the thing that's important is what caused that. And what caused that, why wasn't 3PL just good enough? Like, why wasn't 4PL just good enough? Like, why is 5? What causes that? What causes that are these rapid shifts in commerce, right? We have seen over the last 3 to 4 years such rapid changes in commerce, people pivoting from B2B to B2C or overnight because their channel shut down during COVID, or, hey, I'm making desks and I'm doing okay. All of a sudden I hit COVID and my sales just grew 50x, right? And I need the supply chain to grow. Or maybe I was on the bad side of that. I was selling apparel and nobody was buying work clothes anymore. They're just buying Crocs and sweatpants, right? I needed to shrink. I couldn't be in these 5-year deals or have these leases. So that happened. And then, right, money was cheap. So everything was expanding. And now we're on the other side of that. And you've got different dynamics. So I just think it's these rapid changes in commerce that are driving the rapid changes that supply chain and logistics providers need to keep up with the demands of today's connected consumer, which is driving the demands of the merchants and the retailers and the branded manufacturers we do business with. And I'll close with, I tell people all the time, we are not in the supply chain and logistics business. We are in the commerce business. And we are a part of that stool, a part of that, the leg of that commerce stool. And look, I saw these amazing statistics that 58% of all consumers said during COVID, they shopped from someone they'd never bought from before. Think about that in customer acquisition, first bite of the apple. But if it wasn't a flawless supply chain experience with easy returns, visibility, personalization, you got one bite and then you got a return. Right. So we're in the commerce business. I don't think we're in the supply chain business. And that's what I think is driving all these changes. So the long answer to 3PL versus 4PL, but I think that's what drives it. So
and no, makes sense. I mean, here's another one, right? Like, as you explain this and you talk about Regis as an example or getting into the Gap environment, right? But then we talk about personalization and you talk about some of these elements, right? How is the dichotomy of that kind of coming together? Because, when you deal with a 4PL environment where a 3PL is a mom and pop shop and you say, listen, I'm going to put 5 merchants in here and you're going to do customization for all 5 of these versus doing it at Gap or doing it at Regis, where they are used to this very traditional mindset of like high efficiency, high throughput environments of, listen, I'll walk through like 3 Gap DCs in my site. Right. And they are a work of art. Anyone can get an opportunity. You should walk through those buildings. They are absolutely phenomenal.
It's a cathedral. It's a cathedral for supply chain.
I'm sure you've been through the Columbus site, right?
Oh yeah,
for Gap, and I can tell you there is like literally 50,000 square feet of just like dead equipment that other companies would just want, and Gap's like, yeah, that's too old. I'm gonna get more cooler shit inside my building. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
It's absolutely phenomenal. But now you got to deal with them to say, hey, you're going to be dealing with these merchants, right? Like these growing merchants that require a round box, right? Like as an example, and we got to like pick, pack, and ship. Does that kind of work out? I know that's something that you have to provide because the market demands it in the mid-market specifically.
Yeah, so those are two great points, because I think there's 2 points buried in that question, right? Like one, with Gap, yeah, phenomenal, right? They built what I like to call this cathedral for supply chain, right? The challenges with cathedrals are they're only full on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Easter Sunday, right? The other, or Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, right? Yeah. Or I mean, just pick where you are. But the other 52 weeks or 50 weeks of the year, man, they're like half full or a quarter full, and we're just so fortunate to be able to help optimize that from a technology standpoint. So I think there's two things there, right? On the personalization side, you're right, and this is public information. You've been in the Gap stores. Their units per picker per hour or 300 on average. I mean, that's moving it, like that is moving it. Technology helps with the personalization, but also having the right kind of merchants and the right kind of warehouses. Yeah. And I think that's like, I wouldn't try to jam a CPG kitting merchant into a Gap warehouse. Exactly. I would put somebody in there that's on the apparel side or the shoe side. Maybe some COVID testing kits, right? But something light. But because that's apparel and shoe wear there, right? And I think that's why different types of warehouse, like Regis was really good at kitting because they were building these kits of beauty products. So I think having a network of warehouses gives you the flexibility of matching the right kind of supply with that demand. Technology's certainly come a long way in the sense that you can do more with the technology around the customization, around packing slips and things like that. Yeah. But I think it's going to be critical because as the margins become tighter and tighter, right? Money's not cheap anymore. The fight for the connected customer is at an all-time high, and that's only going to continue to get challenging as we face economic headwinds. You're going to need to have some level of personalization there to meet the consumer where they want to be met. And so we're always looking. That's why this in the past year for us personally at Where to Go, we invested a ton in Amazon FBA prep. Yeah, because we didn't need merchants to have to make choices on, do I put this Amazon inventory here, SFP with you, and somebody else does it. Like, you got to be able to say, I can do it all for you. Or kitting. Yeah. Like, I got to do kitting, or I got to do kit stock or personalization or lightweight. Like I just think the days of taking the low hanging fruit of the slappers or the pick and stick are over, and there's no margin in that business anyway. Everybody's a race to the bottom, right? So you better be able to do those things. And if you can do it with technology versus people, then you're going to be able to scale more. And I think what you see in the Gap is they do a nice job with both.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Again, Gap's amazing.
Yeah, they are. Sure. They are. And so much with how you took everyone to school there, Steve. And that was an awesome overview of 3PL, 4PL, 5PL.
Was it as good as Lavelle? Because Lavelle is really smart. Just say I was on level with Lavelle.
I think you might have got him on that one, but no, absolutely. All right. Don't tell him I told you.
Well, no, just make sure you don't drop it on the cutting room floor and it makes the final cut. I just need that on record somewhere that in some area, I am on the same level of competency as Mark Lavelle. Yeah. He's a good friend of mine. So.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. If I put on my 3PL hat, and that's where I've spent, the majority of my career, and I think of like the sales process, and an opportunity comes into a 3PL, and they usually have like, what's a qualified account? What do we disqualify? And, to simplify, you have a 3PL that's primarily focused on bulk in, bulk out, right? So they like the retail distribution. They like sending cases and pallets out. So if you're 90% B2B aligned with them, and maybe 10% of your business is direct to consumer, they're going to entertain that opportunity. On the other end of the spectrum, there's a lot of 3PLs that absolutely focus on direct to consumer. And so long as 80, 90% of the volume leaving as a direct to consumer shipment, it's qualified. 10% could be kind of the Amazon prep and the B2B and the kitting and everything.
Yeah.
So as you're describing this 5PL model, you are utilizing the best in class of everyone in a network. So if I'm a brand and I'm thinking of, exploring where to go or a 5PL network, in many cases, will my inventory be in different partners based off of their core competency, whether it's B2B, kitting, direct to consumer? Is that how it works, where you're just looking at your ecosystem and all the partners and you're doing placement? And I guess the follow-up to that, is it technology, or what is the challenge with knowing what inventory to place and what node in that network, and how does that get solved?
Those are two great questions, and they're two completely different questions.
They are,
as you know, right? So let's talk about the easy one first, right? A 5PL is really about meeting merchants and consumers where they want to be met with the right type of supply in the right locations for the right type of capabilities. And one of the things I love about our business and where we are is it is absolutely could be like, hey, Dan, you're a merchant. You've got your own warehouse in Phoenix, Arizona, and you love those people there, and you own the building. So keep shipping out of that building, right? Mm-hmm. Optimize that. But you need something in the Northeast. So I got a facility there in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and you know what? We're going to put you there. And then, hey, let's cover NoCal in the Northeast for you. And there's a Gap warehouse, and we'll put you up in that Gap warehouse. And maybe you even want to connect your drop shippers into this thing too, right? Because that's a big part, or your marketplaces. Like, you've got a multi-channel approach.
Right.
You might even have 8 retail stores because you're a regional and you want to ship from those stores, and you want all that connected in here. So a 5PL that has a headless commerce platform will just say, let's connect into the supply that's available that meets your needs. And some of that supply is your own supply, right? But you need an overarching visibility in your inventory. And you know who else needs access to that is your agency that's driving your demand gen. Because your agency that's buying the keywords, they better see where your inventory is.
Absolutely.
So that they can do some geofencing and things like that, and maybe run some deals for you around shipping, right? So that's what's really critical. And I think what's interesting about the space is you've really kind of picked a lane over the last couple of years. A lot of folks have been building WMS systems. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It just feels like a really crowded space. Like, I don't know why, on what planet right now someone would say, let me build another WMS system. But then again, look, I've had some loser businesses, right? I've had some winners and some losers. So I don't get it right all the time. I acknowledge that. But man, that's a crowded space. We took another approach. Our approach was, I don't care what WMS system they use. Let's just use APIs and webhooks to be able to connect into the technology where the supply is. So like in Gap, I didn't try to jam my technology down their throat. I just exposed my APIs, and great. They weren't going to take it anyway, right? But I was just like, here's our APIs. Let's code to this, and then we can light it up. So that's what a 5PL does. It is about meeting people where they want to be met. And that's what a 5PL. So in that example, it could be in all of those scenarios and then some.
Yeah.
Now it becomes about, hey, how do you get the inventory in the right locations, right? So inventory planning requires you to get one other thing right first, is demand forecasting. Because you could have great inventory planning, but if your demand forecasting sucks, I guarantee you your inventory is going to really suck. So you got to start with demand planning. And like, look, not as a link, not as a where to go plug, but look, we've been spending a ton of time with AI, machine learning to help our clients do demand forecasting. It's self-interested, right? Because it helps me get the labor planning right. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be a Fortune 200 merchant, or you could be an internet retailer number 10,000 they all struggle with demand forecasting, right? And none of them can get it right. So you got to get the demand planning right. We've been doing a lot. More and more technologies are out there because if you can get the demand planning right, and that's why it's important to involve your agency. And the other big part of that, especially going into peak, is you got to get that promotion schedule in there. So if you can get access, normally for most of these merchants, you can get it right if you get 5 things. What's your keyword spend on Google? Because that's driving a ton of your demand, right? Because most of your budget as a mid-tier merchant is Google, email, right? Search, email, and the work you're doing on Amazon and some marketplace stuff, right? So we bring in that data. We have our machine learning AI teams working on that, and we present our merchants a forecast every week and say, this is what we're planning for. What does your forecast say? Now, here's the important thing. You better not tee it up like you're smarter than them or you're going to lose. Like, you can't be like, let's compare our forecast. It's just like, here's what we're seeing. What are you seeing? For the whole impact of let's get it right from a labor standpoint. If you get that right, guys, then you can get the inventory planning right. And then you use tools. We use tools like Network View that say, all right, based on these projected sales and where they're going to be in the country, and what it looks like compared to last year, what is the ideal placement of the inventory and the replenishment strategy?
So given that you sit at the helm of one of the most advanced tech first, services and fulfillment, right? Let's just put it in that manner.
We are a technology company. We are a commerce technology company. Yep, 100%.
So as I look back at like the days of, there is the commerce 1.0, like online commerce 1.0, the basic stuff to commerce 2.0, which is what, like I would say GSI and, the GSI radial mix, the PFS web, right? That emerges that kind of talks about, I'm going to do the 3PL. I'm going to do merchant services. I'm going to do like all of this, like credit card processing business, and I'm going to provide customer service, right?
Right.
It's evolving into like this 3.0. And I think it's amazing how things are evolving within this space. But the thing that you just mentioned, right? Like, let's give it to them from a labor perspective. Wouldn't it be ideal because the merchant scale and size you deal with to say, why don't I just provide you the demand forecasting capabilities that I have for your solution and then integrate that agency, right? And it's 5PL again, right? Like, you don't need to build an agency, but allow agencies to tap into you to be able to say, okay, this is what's going to end up happening with this merchant, and we need to plan and react to it accordingly, right? Like that API ecosystem to be able to address that. Just 2 cents.
I mean, we do that, but I think that's why I think it's fascinating what Cart.com's doing right now, right? I mean, I would tell you those guys are as much an agency as they are in the supply chain space, right? They're doing demand gen services, agency services, Amazon management. I mean, they're bringing, it's a commerce landscape. They are bringing a commerce landscape to merchants to say, we can do it. So I love that you mentioned radio and GSI, because that is exactly what we did. We did all of that over there at GSI.
And it went out of fashion, right? It went out of fashion for a little bit, right? Like there were still some companies, it's not as much. We are in a more evolving state just because how Shopify gives you the toolkits, right? To a certain degree to be able to manage. So,
well, we had 15-year deals too. So it could go out of style for a while because we were investing all the front end stuff. Because a lot of people don't realize when we at GSI took the risk to say to these merchants were thinking about their websites as like, if they had 80 stores, the website was store 81. And you got to remember, you got to go back in time. Retailers were not good in the 2000s, in the early 2000s, even in the late 2000s, the aughts, at shipping D2C. They were B2B shippers, right? It was all retail compliance, B2B. Like, that's why the catalogers were the first movers in eCommerce, because they knew how to do onesie twosies. They also had customer service agents on phone lines that could deal with returns and all that. But if you were someone like Dick's Sporting Goods or Sports Authority, which is no longer with us, or Ralph Lauren, you weren't doing D2C. It was all B2B, right? That was so to have a website, we had to build that and spend it, and we had to build the warehouses up front to do the D2C and stand up the call centers. So in exchange for that, we did 15-year deals. And what we got really good at besides that was fraud protection.
Yeah.
because the credit card payments, right? And our fraud protection was fascinating. But this is not a GSI radio commercial, but it evolved from that. So yeah, now it's optionality. So here's your point is great, and I think that's why I don't separate it. Like, we need to be talking to the agency and the marketers as much as we're talking to the head of operations. Like, this is a commerce play. Then one thing you got to be mindful of, and I saw this at eBay as we were bringing the marketing stack together. Yes, the more I do for you, the smarter I can be and provide better value for you. But do you buy like that as a merchant? And sometimes merchants don't buy like that. They're still in silos, right? Like, you may be able to do everything soup to nuts, factory floor to front door, marketing included, but does the merchant buy like that? And I would say to you, they're not buying like that yet. They will, right? But that's why you still have these roles. And I think that's why you got to have what I like to call modes and optionality to meet them where they want to be met. Right.
You literally took the word optionality out of my mouth, right? Like, so they don't buy because most people try to sell. I do it all, but within my ecosystem.
Right.
It's given the option to say, I can do it all. But as you know, that 5PL, that headless side of the environment, you go, but here are all the options that are available to you. Here are the 17 agencies that are tapped into our API ecosystem that you could work with, right? Like, so.
Or maybe they're not, but your agency can take an API, or we'll just give them a login. And because it's all about user rights, right? It's a cloud-based system. So if you were the agency of record for a client of mine, but I'd never heard of you before because you were an upstart and you were their cousin and you had your agent, like you see all kinds of stuff. I'd be like, here, just all you got to do is give him access and light him up for what user rights you want him to have. So
agreed.
But yeah, it's about optionality and meeting people where they want to be met versus trying to jam your stack down their throat.
Completely makes sense.
Yeah.
And maybe on that point, Steve, like meeting customers where they want to be met, would love to get your thoughts on like what is happening. There's still so many conversations going on today about how fast do I need to deliver my goods? What is the consumer expectation in 2023, next year, the following year? And as we all know, more people that never bought something online bought something during the pandemic. And, we're still expecting grocery to be within hours. But I think brands and retailers are struggling with how do I need to be thinking about my direct to consumer experience that is going to meet the customer where they need to be. So would love your thoughts and opinions on that.
Sure. So I think it's yes, and yes. So it's funny. I was doing a LinkedIn post yesterday. I'd posted something and someone had responded to me about, I was talking about certainty versus speed, and it's not either or, it's an and then they were making a point about like consistency and all of that. And I was like, look, consistency is expected. Speed is table stakes. Finality is required. Sustainable, you got to put that in there too. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
And then certainty. Yeah. Right. And we haven't even talked about pricing yet, but like, I think those 5 things are required. So I'll give you some statistics. I've been suspecting for a while that certainty was equally important as speed. And it's about evolution, right? It's just like, look, Amazon set the threshold for consumer expectations of 2 days or less. And part of the where to go value prop early on was, and it still is, a Prime-like experience for your entire supply chain. Like, let's get you 2-day ground delivery anywhere in the country based on how this thing gets formatted. But COVID taught us we didn't need everything in 2 days. Some things we needed in hours. Some things we needed tomorrow. Some things in 2 days. And then some things I'm okay if it takes 3-4 days, especially like on some of the consumer products. Like, how much room is in my refrigerator anyway? Like, I got to clear some room, right? Like, I only got so much room in the pantry for some of this stuff. Or, I'm not going to run out of these Nespresso pods for like a week. So I don't actually need them in 2 days.
Right.
And then we saw that with like Amazon Prime delivery days, and then the green sustainable part of that. We actually we commissioned some research, and I thought it was fascinating that 93% of these shoppers said they would wait longer to receive a package if they were certain it would arrive on the promised date. And as we're all going back into these hybrid work modes,
I so completely agree with you, and I don't want to name and shame, but Wayfair, if you're listening, guys, I got construction going in my house right now. I order a top. They place the order. They accept the order. They said it will be delivered by the 18th of September. Today sits the 22nd of September. It has not yet arrived. They said it went into back order and with certainty will be delivered by the 21st. It has still not shown up. Certainty is paramount, right? Like that is by far the most important aspect. I would have been okay if they had said 22nd. Guess that same tub you can go on Wayfair, put in my address, my address, and it still shows 2-day delivery. So after placing the order, you are changing the delivery timeline. That's a problem.
It's a huge problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I was preaching on that. Like you are preaching. Yes, go preach.
Yeah. Well, it's not me. It's the data. It's the 93% of the consumers saying they would wait longer if they were certain, right? And what drives that? As we all are back, construction projects, things like that. But at the same time, we're all going back to this hybrid model where many of us are back in the office 2-3 days a week. And people want to be home when the packages are delivered. So like if I know I'm going to the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe I'm working from home on Monday and Friday, I'm cool getting it Friday, but just make sure it's there Friday. So, and if it's not going to be there, you better tell me. Don't make me call. Because the other fascinating thing was it was a crazy number. 67% of the shoppers are checking delivery tracking daily, but if someone told you in advance there was going to be a problem, you would stop tracking and just go with what they said. So part of that's getting on the front foot and saying, hey, Dan, I'm so sorry. I'm so sad, man. But that I don't know what your favorite college football team is. I'm just going to pick one. I don't know. That Auburn Tigers hoodie's not going to show up tomorrow. So sorry, so sad. But you will get it the next day. Yeah. And, because we missed it, we're sorry. Here's a 15% coupon. For your next purchase. You've just taken a really tough experience, turned it into a better experience, and maybe even a second bite of the apple. And data lets you do that. So I just think that certain speed is table stakes, and we've learned not everything needs to be there. So you need optionality. Same day, buy online, pick up in store, 1 day, 2 day, green option. The other stat that's fascinating to me is 58% of the consumers said, if you don't have a sustainable green option, you're not in the consideration set.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Because
that's a struggle.
Yeah, I want that option. And so, you got optionality, you got sustainability, you've got certainty, right? Like I'm okay waiting. What was it? 90% of the consumers said they'd forego 1 to 2 day delivery for the following options. 1, free shipping. 2, real-time tracking, and 3, the ability to choose a delivery date. You Beautiful. Give me all 3 of those things, 90% of the consumers said, I'll forego 1 to 2 days, which is, we're evolving, right? We're evolving as consumers. We're still very demanding, and you better have seamless returns. Like there's a whole list of things, but yeah. So Dan, on that thing, speed is table stakes now, and speed without those other 3 things or 4 things leave you behind, and you're not going to be competitive.
And you're starting to see, I was reading something that just the other day, H&M introduces like sign up for our loyalty program or any return is going to be $2.15 as an example, right? Mm-hmm. Like, so they're trying to we are starting to see even Amazon started from charging for returns, right? To a certain degree, like you're starting to see the impacts of like how the consumer behaviors, everyone's starting to push the boundary on that. I think we went really too far out on the same day delivery business for just like apparel and whatnot. Like that wasn't as required. And I think there is an impact in the market as well. So you just mentioned, right? Like people will let go 1 to 2 days, while the hypothesis was, no. The world is going to move to 1 day or same day, right? And no, that hasn't come to fruition, right? Like, do you have a theory on that? Yeah.
Well, for some products, right? I think it's all based on product and need. Like I need like we deal with a lot of healthcare customers and you know, in temp control or like that stuff that's table, you know, like that's same day, that's next day. Like, like when you're delivering like COVID vaccines, like that, 100%. But like, as we went though into COVID and people like my parents like started shopping online and buying groceries, right? Like that never should have happened. I mean, there's part of it that's great. I'm not the only one, but that never should have happened, right? My parents should not know what BOPUS is. They're in their 80s, right? Like, and now they won't do anything else, man. It is all buy online, pick up in store for them. So, but there's things they don't need overnight, and they're cool with that. And then with the younger, I don't want to say the younger generation, but look, you certainly got different generations that care more about different things. And certainly when you think about some of the younger generation, green sustainability is really important. Yeah. And you've got folks of principle there that are like, you know what? It'd be really cool to have that tomorrow. It'd be really cool to have that in 2 days. But if I select this option, I know, and it's green, and they tell me that carbon neutral or that zero footprint, I'm cool waiting because I've been waiting, you know, it's not life changing for me right now. Right. Like, so like for me, these pomade products that make my hair look the way it looks, keep it tamed. I got plenty. I don't need it tomorrow. Just get it to me in a couple days. So I think generations, they care about different things, and having the ability to cater to those different customers with the optionality they need puts you in a winning hand. But
great. Yeah. And I do need the number of your hairstylists. So, because I'm going for that. And as far as pomade is concerned, subscriptions, Amazon subscriptions are amazing. You just put it on subscription. The damn thing shows up every month. And sometimes I pile up on that stuff. So
you do. And that's a whole different, subscriptions is a fascinating topic to talk about, like loyalty programs, replan programs. Yeah. What Order Groove is doing. I think there's so much great stuff out there. So, but that's like a whole different commerce landscape. So
I agree.
That'll be our second podcast.
The second podcast.
We'll do a second. Second podcast on that. But you know, it's funny. Here's what I would say. People are like, oh, that's really cool. What's peak going to look like this year, man?
Yeah. That's where we were headed, buddy. Yes.
So it's interesting because I think when I think about peak, and we've done research on this, and we commissioned a peak study. I was looking at a retailer's peak study just yesterday to see if there was anything new there. So I'll give you my opinion on it, and then I'll tell you what the research shows, right? Because I'm not saying it's conflicting, but I think there's a puzzle that's got to be put together here. And I don't think all the pieces are on the table yet. You know, I think we're trying to put together a puzzle here, man. And there's some pieces that have fallen on the ground or maybe weren't packed in the box. And you're wondering, like, where is that piece right now? So I think we're looking at a peak that looks a lot like 2019. And we haven't seen a 2019 peak since COVID. And so we've seen 3 different peaks over the last 3 years, right? We saw a 2020 peak where we had huge supply chain issues that was the Christmas. Everybody's stuff was late, where you got your stuff in January. In 2021, we had the not enough inventory in the country Christmas. So if you wanted like a men's large blue shirt and you didn't buy it by November, chances are it was gone. So then we were telling people to buy early, and people moved early. You saw an earlier peak. It spread out pretty good. We had the holiday of 2022, where there was too much inventory in this country. And this was when we started seeing the interest rates going up and the economy tightening down. It was like this middle lull. People bought early. There was a middle lull and this huge thing late. So what's it going to look like this year? I think we're going to see like 2019. A couple things though, right? Prime days earlier, a couple months ago, were pretty indicative. In fact, they were like 11% up year over year. So that's telling you people are looking for deals, but that's also pretty much electronics oriented because Prime days are associated a lot with electronics. We got these deal days coming up here. I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll see what happens there. But I think it's going to be late. Christmas is on a Monday. So that's about as late as you can get. in terms of delivery week, right?
Yeah.
Like Monday to Sunday. So I think it's going to be really late, so I think it's going to be late and loud. But what the data is saying that 73% of the merchants are expecting higher holiday sales compared to previous years, which I think is interesting on the state of the economy, right? But it seems positive in nature, although merchants aren't leaving anything to chance in 2023, where 93% of them have said they've made significant adjustments to their peak planning, where they're looking to, one, they're going to revisit their peak plan like more frequently than they have in the past, and you kind of have to. They're going to have 84% are planning more aggressive promotional calendars than they've had in previous years, and and then 50% of them are looking to introduce new deal days, like have their own deal days and introduce new deal days. So when you think about all that, I think that's a lot of discounting, promotions, things like that. And I think when you get beyond that, 95% of them talked about adding delivery options. And out of the 95% of them said they've added more than one. They've added more than one option this year, more than they had last year. So whether it's free shipping, right, or 1 to 2 day delivery or free returns, I just think it's important. So I think what that underscores is it's going to be late. It's going to be deal driven. And I think we're training these the consumers to stay late in the process to get a good deal. And that looks a whole lot like 2019 to me, but we'll see. Right. Yeah. We shall see. That's what I'm seeing. And that's what the data says.
But Steve, there is certain learned behavior as well, right? Like we have learned that in an integrated kind of merchant environment where logistics and agencies and et cetera, like kind of playing together, you realize that, listen, logistics is going to have difficulty, right? Like that's why all year long, we plan for the peak, right? And merchants, the exact same thing. Ideal state, right? Like if this is the prediction we are making, we want it to be a little bit more spread out, right? Like we all like the little spread out peak that we saw, and giving these deals, these discounts for early purchases. I think I think there is learned behavior on merchants' part as well. So you're going to see a lot of that play out quite well. I don't know how. Sorry.
I hope so. I'd like to see them go early, right? We all want it spread out. You all want it to go early. It's funny. You should reward first movers, right? If you think about the whole thing, like the people who wait the longest get the best deals. The people who should get the best deals are the people who go early, like because you get your capital quicker and you turn the inventory and your cost to carry is so much lower. Yeah. But what happens is you got to make a number, right? There's a reason why deals close at the end of the quarter.
Yeah,
there's a reason why.
It should be like purchasing an airline ticket, right? The closer I get to the date, it should be more expensive.
The more expensive it gets.
Right. I mean, think about it. Like we've all trained these customers to buy at the end of the month or buy at the end of the quarter because they get a better deal. But the customers who buy the first week of the quarter should get the better deal because your time to revenue is going to be, you're going to recognize revenue. I think peak's going to be fascinating this year. I would say that what it underscores is you really need a flexible, resilient supply chain to map to these rapidly changing commerce ecosystems and consumers. And one size doesn't fit all. It's why you never hear me say 3PL only, 4PL only, 5PL only. I'm just like, look, you're going to need a combination of all of those things. Yep. And you're going to need providers. Just make sure that they are trustworthy, reliable, are going to be in business, and have the rigor to offer you flexible resiliency. It's like, I don't know if you guys ski, but if you ever skied moguls, man, I think about my knees. It is flexible resiliency because if my core's not strong, one run and I'm done, right? Maybe even like yard sale. But it's flexible resiliency that's required to meet today's commerce landscape. And it's why I love what we're doing here at Where to Go. And it's what I love the work that you guys do and the insights on these podcasts.
Yeah, I love it.
You said a lot of great things, Steve, man, and really appreciate all the insights and knowledge bombs. I am absolutely certain there's going to be a podcast 2 in the near future. So Thank you for joining, and want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience, where they could go to follow you on social, where they go to learn more about Where to Go.
Sure. Where to Go, WARE, go.com. A lot of great information there. I think our LinkedIn's a good follow. Honestly, I think our Instagram's a good follow because we show a lot of the culture of the company. And a lot of people don't know that we're very intentional about 2 community events a quarter to get involved in our local communities, because that's where we work and play and live. I think our gram is a good follow. And then I'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, Steve Denton at Where to Go there on LinkedIn. But I'd love to hear from anybody, and I appreciate the time, and I hope everybody has a great season. I think we got a lot of work to do. And it's going to be a roller coaster. So
appreciate you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve.
You bet. You all have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Hi, I'm Ninad Acharya, CEO and co-founder of Fulfillment IQ. And I'm here with
Dan Call, CRO and partner at Fulfillment IQ. We're the team behind the eCom Logistics podcast. Our mission is to provide you with genuine insights from our work alongside logistics leaders to help you improve your supply chain.
In the eCom Logistics podcast, we share the knowledge and the insights we've gained from working alongside amazing brands, retailers, 3PLs, and VCs, so you can make the most out of your supply chain journey.
If you like what you're hearing, we'd truly appreciate your support with a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting channel. Your feedback not only keeps us going, but also helps others find the podcast. If you think Fulfillment IQ can assist you, or if you have an idea related to logistics, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm always up for a chat and ready to explore new possibilities together.
Stay tuned to the eCom Logistics podcast on your favorite podcast platform for fresh and practical insights into e-commerce and logistics. Until next time, let's keep making a difference in logistics together.